Hello dear students, in this video we will see the detailed solution of chemistry part which has been asked in the NTSC stage 2 exam 2019-20. Okay, so here is our first question. Okay, obviously this is the 14th question in set paper, but for the chemistry part this is our first question. See, question number first says that 1.80 gram of glucose, that is C6H12O6, was dissolved in 36 gram of water. The number of oxygen atoms in solution are, so total number of oxygen atoms are asked which are present in solution. See, we know that solution is made up of two parts. Solution is made up of two parts, that is solute plus solvent. Okay, so if we want to know the number of oxygen atoms in solutions, so how we will approach this particular question? See, if somehow we find out the number of oxygen atoms which are present in solute and the number of oxygen atoms which are present in solvent, so if we add both the number of oxygen atoms in solute and solvent, we will get the total number of oxygen atoms in solution. Okay, simply we will do that. So for finding the number of oxygen atoms in solute and solvent, we will be needing the mole. Okay, we will use the formula of mole. We know that the formula of mole is given mass, okay, given mass upon molecular mass, given mass upon what? Molecular mass. Okay, so see here solute is what? Solute is glucose. Okay, so we will say solute is what? Solute is glucose, and the given mass is, okay, given mass of solute is 1.80 gram, and solvent is what? Solvent is actually your water. Solvent is actually what? Water. Okay, and the given mass, okay, is what? 36 gram. Okay, so first of all we will find out moles, and we know that in 1 mole how many number of atoms or molecules are present. Okay, through that approach we will solve this question. Okay, so we will solve this one by calculating moles of solute. Okay, given mass. Okay, what was the given mass of solute? 1.8 gram. Molecular mass of glucose is what? 180 grams. Okay, now if we solve, what we will get? We will get 1 by 100. Okay, now this is mole of solute. Now in 1 mole, number of molecules are 1 mole contains what? 1 mole contains Na molecules, obviously. Okay, so in we know that 1 mole contains Na molecules, so 1 upon 100 will contain 1 upon 100 mole will contain, that is Na upon 100 molecules of glucose, correct? Okay, now as we can see here, in 1 molecule of glucose, we are having 6 oxygen atoms. So we know the total molecules of glucose, and 1 molecule of glucose, it contains, 1 molecule of glucose contains how many? 6 oxygen atoms. 6 oxygen atoms. Okay, so in Na upon 100 molecules of glucose, total number of oxygen atom will be what? In Na upon 100 molecules of what? This glucose, we will have how many? 6 into Na upon 100 oxygen atoms. Okay, so we got the answer of how many oxygen atoms are present in solute. Okay, this 6 into Na upon 100. Correct. Now we'll find out the number of oxygen atoms which are present in solvent also. Okay, so let's solve that part also. We'll find out the moles, okay, in case of solvent. So mole of solvent equals to, given mass, we have been given how much gram of water? 36 gram of water, and molecular mass of water is actually 18 grams. Okay, so what we'll get? Mole of solvent is equals to 2. Okay, and we know that 1 mole contains Na molecules. Okay, and we know that solvent is what? Water. So total number of molecules of H2O equals to 2 into Na. Correct. Now in H2O, as you can see, one molecule contains how many oxygen atoms? 1 oxygen atoms. So obviously 2 into Na molecule will contain how many oxygen atoms? Simply 2 into Na molecules of H2O contains what? 2 into Na oxygen atoms. Correct. Okay, so we know how many oxygen atoms are present in what? Solute and solvent. Now we'll add both of these, so we'll get total number of oxygen atoms in solution. So by adding what? In the earlier part, what we have done, 6 into Na upon 100. Okay, this was the number of oxygen atoms. Okay, and in solvent we got how many oxygen atoms? 2 into Na. Okay, so we'll add both these numbers. We can take common Na. Okay, what we'll get? 6 plus 200 upon 100. If we are going to solve this thing, okay, what we'll get? We'll get this fourth one. Okay, 12.4 into 10 ki power 23. This much oxygen atoms are present in solution. Moving on to our next question, that is the 15th one. See, consider the following statements. Okay, we have been given different statements. Okay, we'll consider the statement and we'll analyze which is the correct statement or statements. Okay, now first statement, what it says: fluorine, chlorine, nitrogen and oxygen are electronegative element. Obviously, yes, they are electronegative elements. Yes, so statement 1 is actually correct. Now moving on to our second statement, that is electrons in the atoms given in statement 1 are in K and L shell only. See, we know that atoms contains electron in different shells starting from K, L, M in this way. Okay. Now if we talk about chlorine, okay, atomic number of chlorine is what? 17. Now if we distribute these 17 electrons in different shells, we'll get 2 electrons in first shell, then 8 and then 7. So we'll name these shells K shell, L shell and M shell. So here statement 2 was saying that electrons in the atoms given in statement 1, whatever the atoms which are given in statement 1, they contains electrons only in K and L shell only. But as we know, chlorine contains electrons in M shell also. So this statement is actually wrong. Correct? Now moving on to our third one, that is tendency of forming cations decreases in second period of periodic table up to fluorine. Obviously, see how we can say that. See, if we are moving in a second period, see second period, it contains which elements? See, second period contains lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. Okay, now we know that on moving from left to right, okay, simply size of atoms decreases. We know this thing. Okay, as the size of atom decreases, electron losing tendencies also decreases, okay, and electron gaining tendencies increases. So yes, we can say that tendency of forming cations decreases in second period of periodic table up to fluorine. So statement 1 and statement 3 both are correct, but statement 2 is wrong. So the question is that correct statement is or are. So which are correct statements? 1 and 3. So our correct answer will be third, that is this 3. 1 and 3 only. Okay. Coming on to our next question, that is the 16th one. See what it is saying. See, let T equals to temperature, T is denoting temperature, H equals to humidity, V equals to wind speed. Okay. Which of the following are the best suited conditions for drying up of clothes? Okay, if we are drying clothes, so which conditions are suitable? Okay, so in first option we are having temperature equals to 40 degrees Celsius, okay, humidity equals to 10%, velocity 45 meter per second. Second option we are having 28, obviously they will all be in degrees. Now see, if we look at the options, okay, if we carefully look at these options, so the best suited option we'll get from here is that the first one, okay, first is the best suited option. Why? Because see, temperature equals to 40 degrees Celsius. Among these different temperatures, we are having this particular temperature 40 degrees Celsius, highest temperature. Obviously if we are going to have higher temperature, then obviously clothes will dry very fast. Okay. Next, also humidity is 10%. That means among all these options, humidity is least. Obviously less humidity, more evaporation, so clothes will dry easily. Now wind speed, if we look at these options, yes, in first option wind speed is maximum. So obviously we know that as the wind catches speeds or winds becomes gusty, evaporation takes faster or evaporation proceeds with higher, okay, with higher intensity. So obviously among 1, 2, 3 and 4 options, first is the best suited option. Okay, so the answer for this question is first. Moving on to our next question, that is the 17th one. See what it is saying. See, 100 ml of solution containing 0.1 mole of NaOH per liter was mixed with 100 ml solution containing 0.02 mole of H2SO4 per liter. The amount of NaOH in the mixture in grams will be. See, we'll solve this question through the concept of equivalent. We'll first of all write what is given to us. Initially, see, we know that 100 ml of solution containing 0.1 mole of NaOH, that means V1 equals to 100 ml. Okay. Now next, the question is saying 0.1 mole of NaOH per liter. So what we can inference from here? See, this is actually molarity. Okay, we can write this is molarity, M1 equals to 0.1 moles per liter, obviously. Okay, so M1 equals to 0.1. Now this is the given information for NaOH. One more thing I would just like to say is that, see, NaOH is a base which releases single OH minus ions. So we can say that the valency factor for NaOH is what? 1, correct? Okay. Now for the next part, 100 ml of solution containing 0.02 moles of H2SO4. So we'll say V2 is equals to is also 100 ml, correct? Now it is given that 0.02 moles of H2SO4 per liter. Again, obviously it is also molarity. So M2 is equals to 0.02. Okay, this is the given information for H2SO4, correct? Now in this particular acid, see, this is a strong acid, obviously it can release 2H plus ions. So we can also say that the valency factor for H2SO4 is what? 2. Okay. Now why I am saying this particular valency factor, okay, why I am including these things? See, because we will solve this question through concept of equivalent. See, we know that equivalent, how we can find out number of equivalents? See, equivalence is equals to valency factor into molarity into volume. If it is in liter, okay, we'll say equivalent, but if it is in ml, we'll say milliequivalents. So obviously, see, the question is dictating clearly that NaOH is present in excess amount. Okay, so what will happen? NaOH will react with H2SO4. H2SO4 will be consumed totally. Okay, so we'll be left with what? NaOH only. So we'll calculate the left milli equivalents of NaOH. Okay, so what we'll calculate? Left milli equivalents of NaOH. Okay, we'll do this by subtracting the equivalents of NaOH. Okay, that means we'll subtract the equivalents or milli equivalents of NaOH from the milli equivalents of H2SO4. So how we'll do that? See, we are having this formula N into M into V. So first of all, we'll write the milli equivalents of NaOH. What? Milli equivalent of NaOH minus milli equivalent of what? H2SO4. Correct? So in this case, we are having valency factor 1, molarity is what? It is 0.1. So 0.1 and volume is 100 minus, in case of H2SO4, valency factor is 2, molarity is 0.02 and again volume is what? 100. So left milli equivalents of NaOH. What will get? Milli equivalents of NaOH. Milli equivalent of NaOH. Okay, or extra NaOH, you can also say that. See what? Simply we will say 10 minus 4, that is 6. Okay, so these are the left milli equivalents of NaOH. Now if I am going to write left equivalents, that is left equivalents of NaOH, what I will say? I will say 6 into 10 ki power minus 3. Okay, these are the left equivalents of NaOH. Now how we will move further from here? See, simply what we will do, we will use the formula of another formula of equivalent, that is equivalent equals to mass upon what? Equivalent mass. Equivalent mass. Okay, now we are using this formula for left equivalents of NaOH. Okay, we know how much equivalents of NaOH has been left. Okay, so equivalent of NaOH which were left, okay, they were how much in amount? 6 into 10 ki power minus 3. Now mass of NaOH, okay, we are talking about NaOH, whole divided by equivalent mass. So equivalent mass of NaOH is what? Molecular mass upon valency factor. Now valency factor for NaOH is what? 1 and molecular mass of NaOH is what? 40. So I'll simply write 40 here. So mass of NaOH, equals to what? 6 into 10 ki power minus 3 into 40, that is 6 into 4 into 10 ki power minus 2, that is 0.24 gram. Okay, so this is what? This is our answer. So from option 1, 2 and 3, 4, we will say 2 is our correct answer. Students, coming on to our next question, that is 18th one. See, it is saying on oxidation with alkaline KMnO4, it is an strong oxidizing agent, followed by acidification of the reaction mixture, which one of the following alcohols would produce an acid having 3 structural isomers. See, this is important. An acid which is produced due to the oxidation of some particular alcohol, that acid is having 3 structural isomers. Okay, so we have to identify that particular alcohol. So options in front of us, we are having this particular options: propanol, butanol, pentanol and hexanol. See, KMnO4 is a strong oxidizing agent. Okay, if I use this propanol, okay, what is the formula for propanol? This is what? CH3 CH2 CH2OH. Okay, now if we are going to react this propanol with alkaline KMnO4, what? Alkaline KMnO4, what we'll get? We'll get an acid. Okay, which acid? CH3 CH2 COOH. If this alcohol is propanol, then obviously on oxidation it will produce an acid which will contain 3 carbon atoms. So if the alcohol was propanol, then obviously acid would be what? Propanoic acid. Propanoic acid. Correct? Now, is this acid contains 3 structural isomers? Yes. Okay. How? See, first of all, this is the first structure. Correct? Now, this is the basic structure of propanoic acid. Now, students, see, structural isomers contains, okay, it includes other isomers also. That is your position isomer, chain isomers and functional isomers also. So, if we look at the functional isomers of this particular compound, we can say that the isomers of acid, okay, functional isomer of carboxylic acid, what? It is ester. So, one more structure we can draw, and that structure is what? CH3 COO CH3. Obviously, see, in these two structures we can simply see that we are having 3 carbon atoms. How many oxygen atoms? 2 oxygen atoms. And how many hydrogen atoms? 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, this structure also contains 6 hydrogen atoms. So both these structures, they are isomers of each other, correct? Having same formula but different, okay, different structures, okay, or we can say they are having different what? Functional group. Now, one more structure we can draw, okay. Which structure? See, this one. If I am going to write HCOO CH2 CH3, okay. So here also you can say 1, 2, 3, it contains 3 carbon atoms, 6 hydrogen atoms and 2 oxygen atoms. See, this is what? This is simple propanoic acid. This is what? Methyl ethanoate, and this is what? Ethyl methanoate. Okay. So yes, this particular is having 3 structural isomers. So for this particular question, we'll say our first option is correct. Okay. Students, next question we are having in front of us, that is the 19th one. It says atomic number of an element Z is 16. Element Z has 2 isotopes, Z1 and Z2, with 16 and 18 neutrons respectively. The average atomic mass of a sample of the element Z is 32.1 U. Okay. Which one of the following percentages of Z1 and Z2 in this sample is correct? Okay. So we'll use the concept of average atomic mass. So first of all, we'll write that formula, average atomic mass. See, average atomic mass. What is the formula for this? See, if we are having 2 atoms, okay, and they are isotopes of each other, okay, so we'll say that mass of that particular, that means mass of that atom 1 into the percentage in which it is found, okay. So let's say X percentage, okay, plus the mass of that particular element, the second atom, okay, because since these 2 atoms are isotopes of each other, so obviously another that other atom will have different mass number, okay, or will have different mass. So mass 1 into percentage of that particular isotopes which is found, and the isotopes, the mass of that particular isotopes into the percentage in which it is found. Let us say this is found in Y percentage. Okay. Now we are going to divide this by 100. Okay, this is the basic formula for average atomic mass. So we know that the atomic number for an element Z is what? It is 16. So mass number, that means for we can say mass 1 we can calculate, since we have been given what? Number of neutrons. So we will say mass 1 is equals to what? 16 plus 16, that is 32U, correct? And mass 2 is equals to what? Atomic number is what? 16, and number of neutron is what? 18. So 16 plus 18, that is 34U. So we are having these two isotopes which are having mass 32 and 34. Now we have to find out the percentage, X percentage and Y percentage, in which these two isotopes are present. Okay, so we'll solve this, and we know that average atomic mass is 32.1. Okay, see, we know that average atomic mass is given to us, that is 32.1. So we know mass 1, that is 32. So I am saying this is what? X. This is this isotopes is present in X percentage, and the mass of another isotope is what? It was 34, and it is present in Y percentage, whole divided by 100, correct? Okay, so now if we solve this particular equation, we will get 32x plus 34y is equals to what? 3210. Okay, we will say this is our first equation. Okay, now what we will do for second equation? See, we know that obviously we are talking about percentage. So X percentage plus Y percentage together, they will account for what? 100%. Okay, so this is our second equation. Okay, now we will solve these two equations. We will simply get X percentage and Y percentage. Okay, now X is what? X is for Z1. Okay, let's say I am saying Z1. If I am going to multiply 32, okay, with equation 2, we'll get what? We'll get 32x plus 32y is equals to 3200. Okay, this is our, let's say, third equation. Okay, so we'll simply solve first and third equation. Okay, so I'm going to solve first and third equation. So we have to do some mathematical calculation here. Okay, so we have to do here some mathematical calculation, that is 32x plus 32y is equals to 3200. Okay, this was our equation. Okay, simply just subtract it, it will cancel out. Okay, 32 we'll get 2y is equals to here 0 1. Okay, so y is equals to what? It is 5%, and we know that x plus y percent accounts for 100%. So we say x is equals to what? 95%. Okay, we got the values of y and x. Okay, so coming on to our that question part. Okay, so Z1, yes, we got as I told you, Z1 is denoting actually x1. Okay, and Z2 I have taken of y was denoting actually Z2. So first option for this particular question, first option would be the correct one. Okay, so coming on to our this question, that is the 20th one. This question is a bit long. Okay, so we'll understand this question in a very smooth manner. See what it's saying. See, it's saying detergents are also called surface active agents, okay, or surfactants. These have two distinct parts, one hydrophilic spherical part and another hydrophobic long tail made of carbon chains. Yes, I am just drawing a simple diagram, okay, for surfactants. See, basically surfactants, this is what our hydrophobic part, and this is what our hydrophilic part, okay, as has been given in question, okay. So this tail is actually hydrophobic, okay, this is hydrophobic and this is hydrophilic. Now, two experiments A and B were carried out. In experiment A, surfactants was added in a beaker containing water. Okay, so in experiment A, we are simply adding surfactants in water. In experiment B, surfactant was added in a beaker containing hexane. Okay, so here water is actually a polar solvent, and if we talk about hexane, it is non-polar. Okay, so see, these two types of micelles are getting formed, okay, as we can see here. See, the following are the possible results of these experiments. See, in first option is saying what? In experiment A, we'll see figure A as I shown you, okay, this is our figure A and this is figure B, okay. So coming on to our this question part, in experiment A, micelle is formed where hydrophobic part is inside the micelle and hydrophilic part is outside the micelle. See, this is how hydrophilic, okay, and this is what? This is hydrophobic. So obviously, see, we can see here in figure 1, this is, see, this surfactant, that particular surfactant is added in water, and water is what? Polar. So obviously, polar and polar, they love each other. So this part is what I told you, this is a hydrophilic part, that means it is water loving, okay, but this chain is a hydrophobic. So that's why these heads are outside and tails, they are concentrated nearer to each other, okay. So in this in water, obviously you will see this type of micelle formation, correct, okay. Since water is polar, so obviously polar part will love each other, and this is also polar part, okay. So that's why we are having this type of micelle. Now look at the second option. See, in experiment B, micelle of reverse type is formed where hydrophilic part is inside the micelle and hydrophobic part is outside the micelle. Yes, why it is so? Since, see, the surfactant has been added in what? It is added in hexane, and hexane is what? Non-polar. It is what? Non-polar. So obviously, see, we simply know that polar loves polar part and non-polar loves non-polar part. So obviously, this non-polar part or hydrophobic part, okay, this will remain outside, and the hydrophilic part, the polar part, will remain inside. So yes, this is what? See, these two micelles, if we look at, see, this is the basic micelles, and if we look at this figure B, this is just the opposite of A. So we are saying this is reverse micelle, correct, okay. So obviously one is true, second is also true, okay. That means we can see, yes, the both observation 1 and 2 observations are correct. Now third one, micelle of reverse type is formed in experiment A. No, this is wrong, okay. Fourth one, micelles are large enough to scatter light in A. Obviously, see, we know that whenever surfactants are added in that particular solvent, they forms micelles, and that micelles lies in what range? Colloidal range. So obviously colloids, they do scatter light. So fourth option is also correct, okay. So from from the given options, we have to choose the correct observations. So correct observations are what? First, second and fourth. So first, second and fourth is where? First, second and fourth, second option, okay. This is our right answer for this particular question, first, second and fourth only.